for a ride.
You know, we could get up and have our coffee and walk across the parking lot and be working, or down in the yard and be working. So that was kind of a nice experience to do that. And you know, that's a huge, if you can do that. And I mean, your housing then kind of comes along with the deal. So we lived here for 3 years. The first year was in the apartment. The second 2 years was in the RV, and so it was very easy for us to be working in things like this over here. But we also had those other 2 resorts. So actually, we did not have the Rainbow Haven by that time. We had the Fisherman's Hideout. We had Fisherman's Hideout, and then we had the Cross Timbers Cabins, and those were still requiring attention. And so we had a friend that had bought a resort down on the lake called Rainbow Haven Resort, and his name is Craig. And I was over there working one day on the house, or I guess both of us were over there on one of our other cabins, and Craig pulled in, and he said, he came back to talk, and I could tell he was a little stressed out and was very preoccupied with something. And what had happened, and I didn't really realize this because we were over here so much, but he had gone through an illness that almost killed him, and then he went through a divorce that was not an ugly divorce, but to him it was a traumatic experience. And he had and then he'd also experienced a flood down there, which did quite a bit of damage to not so much the buildings that he had, but
Christmas, I think.
that was at Christmas in 2015, I think it was.
Yeah.
And but it had been so many things in such a short amount of time that he was just, you know, I don't know. He's a good friend, but he was to the point where he was ready to be done with all of it. And he's been very open about this. He's not, you know, hidden it from anybody, but he was ready to let the whole thing go back to the bank. He was over there wondering, and they had a house over there, and he was going to ask me if I knew a realtor that would help him sell the house. And while we were talking, he got a phone call, and it was actually from the bank. And as I was hearing his end of the conversation, it was, you know, I gave him a timeout sign, and he kind of covered up his phone. And I said, why don't you let me talk to the banker and see if we can work out something so you don't have to go through this foreclosure process. And so he handed the phone to me, and I talked with the banker a little bit, and the bank, I said, you know, can we get together and talk about, you know, this situation, and if there's a way that we can kind of fix it or remedy it. And he did. And so what ended up happening was we went and talked to the bank, and we worked out a deal to go ahead and purchase the resort from Craig, so that he could kind of wash his hands of it and go away and not have to deal with it anymore. And so it happened really fast. I mean, this was one of those things where we stumbled into it one day, and literally 3 days later we had a contract set up with it, and about 2 weeks later we ended up closing on the place. And it was, you know, from just barely over 2 weeks of time, we went from not even having another resort property on our radar to actually owning another one yet. And it wasn't a huge one like the tree houses were, but it's much bigger than the other ones that we had over there.
And we seemed to, when we had it, we were living here in the RV, and we were, we hired Craig to stay on for about a year or so.
We told Craig that the condition was, we had a condition, and it was, if we were going to do this, he had to agree to stay on for at least 1 year and kind of run the operations over there for us until we could kind of figure out what we were doing, because it really did happen fast. And he agreed to do that. He goes, man, I was ready to get out of here, and now you're making me stay for another year. And so anyway, so by I guess it was February or March of 2016, we had a fourth resort that we were operating over there. And so now it had gotten to the point where we were like spinning plates, right? So
Yeah.
it was like there was things going on in all of them, And
we bought boats for Rainbow Haven.
Yeah.
We were shopping for that. I was buying more linens and
yeah,
all
they
kinds
lost
of
a
stuff,
lot of that
because
in
there
the
was a lot of
flood.
stuff that went in the flood, and so I was really busy. We were really
Yeah, and so, just to kind of recap or put an overview over the whole experience, we started this in 2011 with those first little cabins. Had no intention of running a resort property or doing any nightly rental cabins or anything like that. We just got those cabins for our family's use. That changed into renting those cabins at Cross Timbers Cabins. And a year later, when we had people demanding the pool because it was so hot that summer, so in 2012 we bought that Fisherman's Hideout,
right.
which had had 7 cabins in a house that we were renting all of those out.
But we
Some
really,
as nightly cabins and some as monthlies, and had that pool.
that pool, he really
Two-
wanted that pool.
2 years later, in 2014, we worked out the deal to buy
Here.
the treehouse property, so that put us into 3 of them, and then that was 14, and it was early 2016. So a year and a half later is when the Rainbow Haven thing popped up, and,
Yeah.
we got into that one. And this one here at the treehouse place, it's Branson Treehouse Adventures, by the way, is what our name was for it. And this one was sort of planned and calculated, and a lot of work went into the planning and the acquisition of it. The other ones just all kind of happened, and I think they happened because we were in the middle of that business. Wouldn't you say? I mean, we found ourselves in the middle of that business, not really on purpose, but sort of by accident. And so as we were in and operating around there, we sort of became those people that are busy with resort things and nightly rentals and that. And so we just kind of stumbled into those kind of deals, and we were exposed to those, I guess would probably be the better word. We were exposed to that environment, or that sort of business environment. And so we were around when the deals were happening, and I mean, if you knew me, it's like I'm always on the computer looking for them anyway, but all of those were just things that we sort of stumbled into. So our big resort adventure was mostly accidental, with the exception of this place here was much more calculated and planned. But nevertheless, it's been a wonderful experience. We've had a great time. We feel like we're on vacation all the time. Even when we're working hard, we feel like we're on vacation all the time.
I want to say too that sometimes Martin and I love the Lord, and sometimes you have to take that leap of faith, and sometimes it's hard, but there's a Bible verse that says a man can plan his way.
In a man's heart, he plans his way,
ways.
but God directs his steps.
Yeah,
So
God directs
how
his
I would
steps.
interpret that is that we may plan all of the things we're going to do, and because we're moving forward in a direction that we're planning, God can guide our steps into things and away from things and stuff like that. But it's like you can't make course adjustments if you're just sitting still. So as long as you're moving, God can guide your steps. But if you're not moving, you can't make adjustments or do that. So
And I noticed too, he'll open the door and he'll shut the door, and we were looking at different things, and we could see, as we had moved forward, we could see different doors shutting and different doors opening. So I like that. He's a real good real estate agent.
definitely helped us find some deals and properties. But
It was good.
so anyway, by the end of 2016, we had the Rainbow Haven Resort and was running that one okay. And the first year, Craig had basically went on Facebook and all of his online things and said that he was shutting down for good and never going to open again. And so because of that, he basically told all of his customer base, don't bother calling and don't bother showing up because we're not going to be here anymore. So we actually had to rebuild that business from that.
And we did it for about 3 years, was it, that we worked on that?
What do you mean?
from start we bought it till the time we sold it, do we have it?
No,
for-
it was more than that. It was
Oh.
all of 16, 17, 18,
Oh.
19, and we sold it at the end of 2020. So we were there actually quite a long time, almost a full 5 years.
Oh, I
guess.
know why, because we were here half the time.
We were
and
here
we
for
were
the first
there.
year of it. Craig was over there.